coming to get you, Barbara.
Hi everyone, I'm John Rennie and welcome to this episode of Boneyard Bites. I do apologise for the radio silence over the past few weeks, but I've been a little bit under the weather, but the doctors tell me I'm on the mend and I should be on my feet in no time. The upside is, some of the medicines that they've been giving me have been quite trippy, so I guess there's an upside to every bad situation, right? You can probably hear in my voice that I'm still a little bit ill, so please forgive me if you can hear the deep, sexier voice and the sniffles. But I couldn't let the Halloween season pass without recommending a few horror-themed movies, so I've taken a few of the articles that I've written lately in the community tab about full-length movies that are available here to watch free on YouTube. So even if you are watching this on Halloween night itself, you'll be able to log in and enjoy these fun, spooky movies for free here on the tube. So without further ado, let's dive in. Number 1 on the list is a movie often referred to as Chuck Norris versus Michael Myers. And I mean, with an elevator pitch like that, who can resist? Silent Rage, released in 1982, is a somewhat forgotten genre-bending mashup of action and horror, but it has to be said that it was a pivotal moment in the action star's career. In Silent Rage, he blends the martial arts action that fans had come to love with elements of the slasher genre that dominated the early 1980s. The result is a unique fusion of action and horror, creating a film that stands out not only in Norris's filmography but also within its era. The only other movie that I can think of that comes close would be Robert Klaus's Jim Carter from 1985, which was a mix of gymnastics, karate, and horror from the director of Enter the Dragon, starring Olympic gymnastics champion Kurt Thomas, and B-movie favourite Richard Norton, facing a bloodthirsty game of death, a must-watch for any fans of 80s action and horror. But back to Silent Rage, this film feels like it's trying to be much more than just a Chuck Norris action vehicle.
Can I talk now?
It's an experiment early in his career that was a bold move to try and reach a wider audience.
Let's not talk.
For me, the elements of action and horror don't always mix well, but they are always fun. Norris steps into the role of Sheriff Dan Stevens, donning the cowboy hat that would become iconic in his later roles such as Walker, Texas Ranger, and here he wears it for the first time. What makes Silent Rage even more memorable is its great cast of up-and-coming actors who make this somewhat predictable slasher elements in the film more tense and nail-biting because eventually we come to care for the characters because of the acting. The film features a breakout performance by Ron Silver years before he was to become a household name in movies like Time Cop, and Brian Libby, who would make a star turn in The Shawshank Redemption as the terrifying science-created monster. Libby's portrayal adds a menacing presence to the film, perfectly complementing the eerie slasher atmosphere, while Ron Silver's kind of intensely conflicted doctor adds a dramatic depth often missing from standard action and slasher movies of the time. I think if Silent Rage had been a straightforward slasher film, it would have been much more fondly remembered by horror fans today. It has great horror elements such as the fierce, emotionless and unstoppable killer in the vein of a Michael Myers type character. It's got a moody atmosphere, it's got great cinematography and a haunting 80s synth soundtrack which kicks off the film lovely to set the tone. So, on this Halloween, for fans of genre mashups, it's a movie that holds up as a fascinating time capsule of early 80s slasher cinema, and it's well worth checking out. Free to watch here on YouTube, so just type in Silent Rage Chuck Norris and enjoy the slasher kung fu action.
I knew you'd say that.
Next up for number 2 on the list, we couldn't have a Halloween horror list without having some 80s exploitation cinema, so if there are any fans of 80s Italian horror out there in the Boneyard, this one might be one that you can't afford to miss. This is Joe D'Amato's 1981 classic, Absurd. This is a wild, thrilling ride that delivers everything you could want from an 80s Italian horror movie from its era. It's got over-the-top action, really creative gore, and a relentless, larger-than-life villain. This was written by and starring the legend that is George Eastman, the star of D'Amato's previous video nasty, Anthropophagus from 1980. This Italian horror gem is a must-see for any fans of the 80s slasher genre who love and crave gore, intense and fun experiences. Eastman's performance as the towering, invincible antagonist is more than just a little bit inspired by the low-budget mega-hit Halloween from 1978. Similar to Silent Rage, the character in Absurd is a man with superhuman regenerative abilities as a result of religious and scientific experimentation, and his brutal, unstoppable nature will definitely keep fans of over-the-top horror glued to the screen. From the very start, the film literally hits the ground running, and Carlo Maria Cordillo's beautifully haunting score perfectly complements the impending horror and stalking killer, and it never lets up. Absurd is a great film because it's a film that knows exactly what it is and doesn't hold back in delivering shocks, thrills, laughs, and a whole lot of blood. Eastman and D'Amato make a great duo, and they crafted horror movies together that are not only fun slashes, but also time capsules of everything that makes 80s horror so beloved. Now, if you want a horror slasher Italian classic, this Halloween Absurd will not let you down. Available free to watch here on YouTube, so why wait? Check out Joe D'Amato's Absurd before it's too late. For number 3 on the list, are there any fans of Scarecrow horror movies out there in the Boneyard? Because if there are, boy, do we have a treat for you. Dark Night of the Scarecrow, released in 1981, is a horror gem of the early 1980s that delivers tension, thrills, an eerie atmosphere, and all in the right ways. This made-for-TV movie proves that you don't need big-budget effects to craft a chilling and effective horror experience. The story centers on a simple yet powerful premise. It is a tale of small-town justice gone awry, revenge, and supernatural terror, all wrapped up in a haunting rural setting.
Oh my God! It's him!
Charles Durning gives a standout performance amidst a cast of great character actors as the menacing antagonist, whose misguided sense of justice leads to consequences far more terrifying than he could ever have imagined. The film's slow build-up of suspense keeps you on the edge of your seat, and the Scarecrow's ominous presence throughout the movie adds a layer of mystery and dread that makes this film unforgettable. I first saw this movie on VHS in the early 90s, and ever since then it has stuck with me because of its simplicity and chilling atmosphere. The pacing is perfect and creates tension, leaving the audience guessing who will get their comeuppance next. The Scarecrow's appearance is subtly crafted using simple and classic filmmaking techniques, and the scare sequences are quite spine-chilling, especially the death that occurs in a grain silo that has haunted me ever since my first viewing. And the ultimate payoff to the movie is both satisfying and spooky, and specific to a chilling Halloween, it takes place in a pumpkin patch. So, overall, it's a brilliant blend of psychological thrills and supernatural horror, and it showcases how low-budget TV movies can deliver some awesome, memorable scares. But don't expect much in the way of gore. We'll get ready for some bone-chilling performances, and best of all, on this Halloween, it's available here, free to watch, right here on YouTube. For number 4 on the list, are there any fans of mid-14th century horror and historical dramas out there in the Boneyard? Well, if so, this might just be the movie for you. Onibaba, from 1964, directed by Kaneto Shinto, is a story of 2 women known only as Younger Woman and Older Woman who survive out in the countryside as war rages around them by killing and looting wandering soldiers and samurai who have the misfortune to be consumed in their tall fields of suki grass. Once the murder is done, the women drop their victims into a large hole hidden by the suki grass and barter what they have stolen to a local merchant for sacks of rice and flour. This is how the women live, until a young army deserter named Haichi enters their lives and tells them that the young woman's husband, Kishi, who was also the older woman's son, is dead. And what follows can only be described as pure nightmare fuel. The locations are minimal, consisting of the women's home near a riverbank and the fields of grass that sway in the wind, but with only these two elements of wind and water, Kaneto Shinto creates one of the most hypnotic and dreamlike movies that I have ever seen. Onibaba, although a dark and disturbing horror movie about death, longing, loneliness, and everything in between, is a mesmerizing and beautiful nightmare that is one of the greatest movies of the early 1960s. This is also the movie the director of The Exorcist, William Friedkin, called one of the most terrifying movies ever made.
死んだもんはもう二度と生き返ってはこんからの。
Without spoiling the movie for anyone who is interested in seeing this masterpiece, I say not to inspect the film too much for meaning and themes, as the nightmarish narrative does fall apart on close inspection, although director Kaneto Shinto said that parts of the film are a symbolic representation of the disfigurement that befell victims of the atom bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and reflects the trauma of post-war Japanese society. The best way to watch this movie is to let it wash over you like a nightmare, and I promise you that if you are looking for unique, scary, mesmerizing, and original horror filmmaking that asks you to dream along with the filmmakers, then this classic will not let you down. Available to watch right here on YouTube. For number 5 on the list, I can't say much without giving away huge spoilers, so I'll just say this. I came home and sat down on the sofa and tuned into the newly commissioned Channel 5 here in the UK. And was hit like blunt force trauma by this amazing movie.
We interrupt this program for a special report from Evening World News in Washington.
This is Robert Iscove's Without Warning. This one is for fans of documentary or found footage style movies that are in the vein of the classic siege horror movie Pontypool and the classic Orson Welles version of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds.
They come here to Times Square, as they always do when the world is in trouble. The Cuban Missile Crisis, the Kennedy assassination, the war in the Gulf, all recorded up on that sign.
The whole movie, I was glued to the screen, and the fantastic performances from a mix of familiar 1990s TV faces and real news anchors was incredible.
Robert? All of the news crews here have been asked to pull back from the immediate edge of the crater.
When you watch a movie and you can't guess what is coming next, you know you are in for a treat, and Without Warning delivers this in spades.
I like the aliens. I like that theory.
I definitely don't think it's UFOs.
Without Warning has become one of my favorite movies of all time. And when I found the whole movie was right here on YouTube, I just had to share the good news with you guys.
He was trying to tell me, I don't know, maybe how he survived. I just don't know.
For documentary and found footage horror fans, movies similar to Late Night with the Devil or horror disaster movies like Pontypool, Without Warning is just a must. So I recommend this highly at Halloween. Check it out. I promise you won't regret it.
Matt, what is it? Matt, what do you see? Just tell us what you're seeing, Matt. What's the cameraman's name?
So, did any of your Halloween favorites make the list? Let me know in the comments below. Once I'm 100% better and on my feet again, I promise, usual programming will commence, and I've got a few scripts waiting to go that are ready that I know you're just gonna love. Thanks for all the get well soon messages, they really mean the world to me at this time, and thanks for hanging around, I really appreciate it. So I'll say goodnight, and thanks for listening. And to everyone out there in the Boneyard, Happy Halloween!
Coming to get you, Barbara.